Welcome to Chapter 14 of Intro to Psychology. In this video, we'll be talking about stress and illness. So as we mentioned already, chronic stress is a really high risk factor for many illnesses. Chronic stress can elicit wear and tear on the body in many different ways. And continuous exposure to cortisol can weaken the immune system, putting people at further risk for infection or serious disease. There are many disorders that can be traced to chronic stress, and we call those psychophysiological disorders, diseases that are brought on by stress or are worsened by stress or emotional factors. And those include headaches, asthma, acne, uh, emphysema, eczema, hypertension, irritable bowel syndrome, coronary heart disease, a whole host of illnesses related to blood and circulation, as well as many illnesses related to aging. The longer you live with stress, the worse it is for you. There's plenty of research that shows that stress can actually have an impact on our DNA. That there are some structures called telomeres that protect the ends of chromosomes on segments of our DNA that are shortened with chronic stress. So shortened telomeres can inhibit or block cell division, which would preclude the growth or proliferation of new cells, and hypothetically leads your body systems to age more rapidly. And so this graph shows here that telomeres are shorter on average in adults who have experienced more adverse experiences as children. So we often call these adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. So here, people who have experienced more than one adverse childhood experience, and we're not just talking about like bad things that happen to you when you're a kid. We're talking about traumatic events. We're talking about being abused by sexually abused or physically abused. We're talking about experiencing any kind of traumatic event like war or famine or things like that. So the greater the number of traumatic childhood experiences, the shorter the length of people's telomeres. Much research on psychophysiological disorders has to do with the cardiovascular system. So we've been mostly talking about the nervous system in this class. That its relationship with the cardiovascular system is really important in the study of stress. We often talk about hypertension, having high blood pressure. It's a word that we throw around a lot. And that is blood pressure is the pressure that is exerted on the walls of arteries that are throughout your body and are circulating blood. So you're breathing in oxygen. Oxygen is then put into red blood cells by attaching to hemoglobin, and your heart is the organ that's pumping this oxygen carried in these blood cells all throughout your body. And so everything that your body does really relies on the circulatory system. And if that is impacted in any way, then a whole host of health problems can happen. So when people have high blood pressure, often caused by stress or things like job strain, marital conflict, natural disasters have all been shown to be linked to high blood pressure. It forces the heart to pump harder, putting more strain on the heart, putting more strain on the circulatory system, and leads to many different other health effects. There's no immediate symptoms of high blood pressure, and that's why it's such a difficult or such an insidious killer, because it's not until it gets to a point where it's so bad or too bad that you start to experience other symptoms related to the strain that's put on the circulatory system. It is a common risk factor for things like heart attacks, strokes, kidney failure, as well as different forms of dementia, including vascular dementia and Alzheimer's disease. We often forget that the circulatory system also impacts your brain. Your brain, which takes up at least a third of the oxygen that is taken in by your body, and is really the biggest energy source or energy sucker out of in the human body. relies so heavily on the circulatory system. So any problems with your heart and your circulatory system can impact your brain. We see this all the time. People with dementia, that they have cardiovascular risk factors. The oxygen is not getting to their brains in an efficient enough manner. There's also plenty of research on depression and heart disease. We often see that people who are more severely depressed also have a higher likelihood to experience things like obesity and heart problems, strokes, and the many other psychophysiological disorders I mentioned earlier. One reason for this may be that people who have depression or experience adverse child experiences, adverse or traumatic experiences as children, are more likely to be obese or to smoke or to be physically inactive or to have other social determinants of their health conditions. And so depression may increase the likelihood of living an unhealthy lifestyle and therefore increases the likelihood of heart disease. Another aspect that is related to heart disease that is one of the early studies of health psychology is Friedman's and Rosenman's 1974 research on personality and heart disease. They did research and found that there are basically two types of people uh, based on their personality that makes them at higher risk for heart disease. There's type A personalities and type B personalities. You may have heard of these, and we might discuss this more when we get to the personality chapter. This is a simplification of all the personality types out there. But type A and type B were not just referring to people's qualities or the characteristics, but their risk for developing heart disease. So people who have a type A personality, they found to be extremely competitive, intensely driven, impatient, hostile towards others, and those people were 7 times more likely to experience heart disease. And then there's type B personalities, people who are more relaxed and laid back. And they showed that individuals that indicated or responded to pressure with anger were 6 times more likely than those who indicated less anger to have had a heart attack by age 55. So all this to say that the mental health is an essential part of health, that our personalities, how we interpret situations, the degree to which we feel good about ourselves and feel good about life, and the degree of stress that we experience all has real effects on the human body and on our health.